Good morning. Let's start our session. In this session, several Zero Project Awardees will present insight into African innovative policies and participative political processes within society in sub-Saharan Africa. Representing Light for the World, Mr. Etienne BAGRE. Mr. Etienne is expert on management and administration of company and organization with a graduation as a specialist in finance and accounting, and passionate of governance, system, structures, and processes in the organizations. Representing Outlook Humanitarian Care Initiative, Emmanuel EZE, founder and president. Emmanuel is a think tank on the international development and humanitarian issue, and his mission is to inspire and inform policy and practice which lead to the reduction of the poverty learnings. He will present online. Representing Shonaquip Social Enterprise, Erna and Francisca. Erna is passion lie in solving complex social problems, particularly addressing the dishonorment of the voice of right orders. Representing Lesotho National Federation of Persons with Disability, and luckily we are not sure to get him online because he's facing a lot of challenge to be connected, but we expect he can join during the session. And the last speaker will be Sightsavers, represented by Laurene LECLERCQ. Laurene is the Global Technical Lead, Education and Social Inclusion in West Africa. Laurene is specialist on disability inclusion and in education and local governance, with a particular focus in this last field on citizenship, political participation, and local development. Let's say that democracy is a wish for all countries and people. Democracy is a journey, sometimes long, painful, and can become a disaster when it is against aspiration of most people. Democracy is still a land with adjustment needed. Political participation is a thermometer for the democracy. The level of inclusive and participatory election depend on the stability of our society and its economy. Political participation is a right for all. Our topic will mostly focus on political participation in Africa for women and men with disabilities. The study realized by Central Africa OPDs in 2021 identified main barriers to the political participation for persons with disability in Africa. There are stigma and discrimination, stereotypes, low level of education of persons with disability, including the leaders at the community level, no mention of the participation of persons with disability in electoral framework, inaccessibility of electoral frameworks through registration and voting procedures, lack of access to information and documentations, lack of interest among women and men with disability to politics, armed conflict, which generate fear and reluctance to go to the polls. Main barriers to political participation for persons with disability are the non-implementation of the Article 12 on legal recognition of persons with disability, the Article 31 statistic and data collection, and the Article 33 application and monitoring of the UNCRPD. The violence currently observed in politics, as well the division that is caused, does not motivate and does not facilitate the participation of persons with disability. In sub-Saharan Africa, main actors are pushing to improve political participation of persons with disability. The African Union, United Nations, national government and electoral commissions, organization of persons with disability, and civil society umbrellas and NGOs. There is some innovative action on the field that we can mention. We noticed that there are candidates with disability elected or appointed in some countries in Africa, like Cameroon, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Uganda, etc. Advocacy tools and strategy for inclusive election, political participation of persons with disability are developed in most of the countries. There is a specific article on disability in the Constitution of Tunisia. The availability of reliable disability data collected through the use of the Washington Group question during the national census that could reinforce the advocacy work for disability inclusion. The new information technology that will facilitate voting, including electronic voting for persons with disability. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm pleased to invite for the presentations the first speaker, Mr. Etienne BAGRE from Burkina Faso. He would like to share with us an inclusive election guide developed in sub-Saharan Africa country, the example of implementation of the Article 29 of the UNCRPD in Burkina Faso. Mr. Etienne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear chair and dear co-speaker of this panel. I'm really honored to talk on behalf of an organization that is Light for the World. And I want also to join in this speech our key partners, and one who is in this room. I would cite Mrs. Esther, the Burkina Faso National Election Commission. Please, Mrs. Esther, she is the General Secretary. And it's at the same time a huge responsibility to talk because we as Light for the World, we are supporting partners and we're expecting them to talk and to testify how this project bring change in our system. Anyway, I have to talk, and but without before doing that, I cannot just want to have some thought to my country that at this moment really facing serious insecurity crisis, with numerous people displaced from their home villages, and for sure we are counting persons with disability among these internally displaced persons. But we are saying that hope is a load, and that's why we want also to continue to building, what can I say, a resilient and inclusive electoral system in our country. So let's continue and see what happened in the coming years, mainly because next year we will have elections in the country, and time is not really enough. The inclusive election guide, just to talk about the context, we have a status quo of participation of people with disabilities in our country. As per the law, participation of persons with disabilities in election is a granted right, and it's supposed they are to exercising this right on the basis of equality with others. At the same time, we wanted to confront this narrative to the practice, and we initiated a pilot initiative during the election in 2015 to assess if there is any deviation needed to be addressed. And of course, through the monitoring of this election, documentation of the challenges, this led to the need to really improve the political participation. That's why we designed a full project for advocacy and advocating for inclusive election. This advocacy will focus on identification of the barriers to the effective participation. The second focus was to elaborate a guidance document for the National Election Commission. And something that is also important in this process is the linkage and to creating network between various actors comprising government, civil society organizations, and organizations of persons with disabilities. This project is something that we are telling that it translates our action to action, our value of leave no one behind. And also, I want to add the nothing about us without us. So, our statistics are talking by themselves, because based on the last national census, 73% of persons with disabilities are 18 years old, meaning they have the right to vote. It represents a little bit more than 2 million of persons in from our last census. And as another consideration of this project, we have the UN CRPD and also the Sustainable Development Goals that comment has to support initiative raising the voices of these 2 million of our citizens. To share the key outcomes of this project aiming to remove barriers. The first one is advocacy, to strengthen references to accessibility and reasonable accommodation. All that can be put in the accessibility, talking about registration processes, accessibility of in the polling stations, including also vote documents. And the second outcome is the development of a guidance document. It's why we are calling the inclusive election guide. This document, it's a little bit document, but its content is really prominent for the stakeholders. And we are saying that this document is really the core achievement of this project. We have carried out communication and information through the country, and based on this evaluation, more than 10 million of people have been reached through television and radio. The last actions of this project was the monitoring of the polling, supposed to ensure the effectiveness of measures taken to facilitate the voting. This last result, I would say, is something that's ongoing, and we will have the chance to prove if all measures have been taken in the next election, and in this role, disability movement should play the leadership role. We want to share some successes or some add values of this project. The first one is that the guide really influenced public policy, especially the National Election Commission, about the route to inclusive elections. Political parties and media, organizations of persons with disabilities are really benefited to the guide document. An event organization out of Burkina Faso, like the WAFUD, West African Federation of Organization of People with Disability, already use it in workshop as a reference document. And the sixth sorry, I think, yes. We can also just add that apart these three elements, the guide is also what we can say a long growth capacity and scalability document, because it's something that really doesn't request a lot of money for dissemination, and in the next step we'll have a broader distribution of the guide to all the stakeholders. Talking about the challenges and success factors, first challenges: making material and messages accessible to different types of disabilities. Of course, the first of the challenges that the National Commission has to face. And hopefully, in January this year, a workshop already has been held to discuss how to the condition to realize all these preliminary actions in terms of preparedness, and reflection is ongoing, and we hope will come up to the ideal solution for this issue. Second challenge is also how to get electoral inclusive and all required reasonable accommodation. We have a lot, but we have just point out these two challenges. As success of factors, the first is, of course, that all stakeholders had to have a common agreement on what are priorities for us in the country, and it's regarding mainly the reasonable accommodation. Could we extend to all type of disabilities by the time being, or should we decide to keep priority and 4 type of disabilities have been suggested, and I hope actors will have common agreement on that. Second and important conditions is the funding. We know there are a lot of challenges, a lot of needs in the country. We have, I would say, a low-income country, and currently insecurity issues is really the first of the priorities, but we also need to keep in mind that we cannot skip these elections, and fund has to be provided to the National Electoral Commission, and yearly. Next step, this one is really an handover to other actors like National Board, because has later word and the other actors who have introduced the topic. Now it's, I would say, the operational phase, and it's the role of the National Electoral Commission to go forward. And specifically to train actors, civil societies, parties, and organizations of persons with disability. We want just to thank everybody for your kind attention, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Etienne. And now let's try to have the second speaker online, Mr. Emmanuel from Nigeria, on the topic interactive audio instruction using a mix of radio and digital content to train young learners in a rural area. Emmanuel.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Emmanuel EZE, the founder of Humanitarian Care Initiative, a civil society organization based in Abia State, Nigeria, precisely. I am 57 years old with low cut hair, wearing glasses on my face. I'll give you a brief story of how we came about interactive audio instruction. Next slide. Interactive audio instruction is a digital innovation program designed to support vulnerable women and girls and youths in Nigeria. We believe in storytelling. Storytelling enhanced learning. Many years ago, many young Nigerians, women and child, experienced childhood abuse, stalking, beating, sexual abuse, and so on and so forth. Based on that, many of them are very scared of telling stories about their predicament. And I and my team decided to come together to see how we can help them out. We started what we call radio digital program. We start going from house to house to talk to them about our project. We let them to know the need not to be shy about the program. We begin to transform their life through storytelling to draw their attention on what it takes to know that sexual abuse is against human rights. Many of them are illiterate. They're not sound in their education because of what we experience in Nigeria, poverty learning. So what we did, we called them, we start storytelling to bring their mind together so that they will know what it takes to be away from sexual abuse. We begin by encouraging them to attend our meetings. From there, they started having the ability to speak out. Today, Nigeria is one of the countries in the world that experience sexual abuse in the country. It is well noted. Even as I'm talking to you now today, there is problem in Nigeria all over the place. The system is bad because of we don't have leadership. And it has affected every virtual things we are doing in our country. Thank you very much. Next slide. Our project main objective is to help young learners to be able to learn good skills through entrepreneurship, through education, to empower them to have aim and objectives. Remember, early learning is the foundation of every foundation of life. That's the main objective of our project. Because when you forget to meet the early learning stage, you discover you have missed all. So Outlook Humanitarian Care Initiative is a frontliner advocate. We engage in enlightenment campaign and activities through radio digital program called Interaction Audio Initiative, which is the main project we are focusing on now. We believe that when we come together as a team, we will win the war against illiteracy in Africa. Over 10 million young children in Africa don't go to school currently now because of conflict in all the regions in Nigeria. Kidnapping, stealing, all kind of violence is what is experiencing in Nigeria. So many young children don't go to school. So the purpose of interactive audio instruction is to, we will broadcast through radio station from far distant places. They will be connected. They will be listening to our radio program. We have, it's a scripted. This is what is called professional teaching method. It's not something that you pick people on. It's people that have to do with professionals who are well trained, that have the ability through government curriculum to teach through radio broadcasting. It's very low cost incentives, very wide to reach on distant lane. People can hear us, people can listen to us, people can observe us in a very distant places. Thank you. Next slide. What makes our project innovative? You see in the picture here, this is a classroom teaching. We use different dual programs. Use MP. We can record program and insert it in a recorder and use children to learn in the schools, while the teacher will be there observing what is going on in the classroom. Because what you see in this very program is interactive audio instruction helps teachers to learn to be trained, not only students. When students are properly trained, the teachers all are properly trained, the output result of the training, we see the resulting effect, what is called the outcome effect of our teaching. When you are in the classroom, the radio teacher is busy listening also to the radio program, while also the students are also listening. At the end of the day, there will be so many questions, a kind of interaction. Interaction will be going on in their mind to know what is exactly what happened. But based on that kind of application, you will see we get end result. In our own initiative, in this our program, you discover that it's very, very innovative, very, very innovative in that it builds the ability of children to learn from the low scale to high esteem. Thank you very much. Next slide. Here you will discover these young chaps here in our slide. We have introduced our program. We budgeted a lot of transistor radio to them for a mobile phone and share it among school children in our community. We give it to them so that they can be able to study at their peak and listen. Our radio program is being broadcasted 2 times in a week through the help of our community-based organization. In this very approach, the schools listen to our radio broadcasting so that they can be able to be effective. And this very program is always very, very sensitive during COVID-19 pandemic. Many children were at home. They don't go out. Thank you much. Next slide. The factor of the success of the program. You listen from this slide, you discover the factor of success of our program. This boy is 14 years old. You can see he's handicapped. He's a student of Ososo Community Primary School here in Aba State. The radio you see in his hand is being supplied by OHCI with community-based organization. He follow up our teaching via radio and mobile setting. Based on this program you see in his hand, he listened to our various radio teaching based on employment opportunity, learning outcomes, and gender equality and human rights abuse. All these things comes together to bring students to be aware of the events that happen in the society. And I believe that this very, very project we are going on in our society has helped so many children that are handicapped to have accessibility, to reduce barriers. No, even when you are, we believe in a generation we are living with technology, we defeat barriers. With technology, we enhance enhancement. With technology, people see. And I believe this very topic you see here is very, very attractive in our society. These boys have been able to follow up the program time and time. And this program has been immensely helpful to him to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Now, I invite Erna to share with us the digital-based support group for parents of children with disability, focusing on the role of the network to improve political participation in Africa. Erna, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Before I start, I just want... Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, before I start, I just want to introduce my colleague who didn't introduce in the beginning. It's Fran. She's got a remarkable gift to meet people where they are. So just want to bring Fran into the conversation as well. And then, of course, the parent network. They're all listening from wherever they are, in their houses, in their schools, and so forth. I hope we do it justice. So the parent network is a digital network, like Elie said, that allows parents across South Africa, across 9 provinces, to connect with each other. Since we launched it in September 2020, more than 1,000 parents access the support of the network daily on their phones, mostly via the WhatsApp platform. And they do that, and through connecting, they access peer support, access to quality and relevant information, and then obviously lots of referrals between social, educational, and health services. There's different roles within the parent network. The one of them we call the network parents and the parent researchers. They really have a fundamental important role within the network because they reach out door to door to parents within their areas, specifically making sure that those without smartphones can be part of the conversation around political participation. And they use a tool that we call the Let's Talk Parents tool to monitor the implementation of policy in their areas. We're going to show you a video just for some context. I think it's sometimes difficult to imagine where we work. And it's a story of an 8-year-old girl with a name Nana. She has quite advanced CP, and you will see that she's undergoing a journey in the video with her grandmother as they try to access support at the clinic. And then towards the end of the video, you will see the support of the network and how that really sort of practically happens in a way that they sort of support each other to address these systemic barriers. So please enjoy. You can take it away.
I love you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope one day we get you ready for school too. Sorry to make you uncomfortable. I know this device is too small. I have contacted the therapist. You are on a waiting list, but I know it is just really long to wait. don't mind that they stir. Hopefully singers, people learn about disability. And as Buddha says, Nana can be invited too. This is the school I hope you can go to one day, because the other centers for kids with disabilities only took care of your basic needs and didn't understand you can learn. It is frustrating that I cannot access all these services Nana needs at my local clinic. Now we need to travel to the town, to the hospital, to get her what she needs.
Thank you. It was such a great day making that video with the two of them. So as you can see in the video, and really the concept of the network is that parents of children with disabilities are often isolated, uncounted, or ignored. And it's really exacerbated by a history of disownment of voice, resulting in them being disempowered not to take up their right to political participation. In South Africa, the voices of very few persons with disabilities, and in some cases, no parents, actually influence the policies of the policies that affect their lives in South Africa in general. How we influence policy and sort of how we do it, we just really feel strongly that the continued vulnerability that we're talking about right now requires a more vigorous, coordinated approach that's not relying on individuals' sort of viewpoints, but that parents and children with disabilities or persons with disabilities must be the key informants of policies that's actually directing or influencing their lives. And this is where the tool is coming in that we designed called the Let's Talk Parents tool. The tool, sorry, let me just see quickly. So let's go back to the story of Nana and her grandmother, Mama Lema. So we would like to show you in this tool how she's now actually taking the next step to take up a right to political participation. So in the first video, you've seen her struggling with the systemic barriers and accessing the services. Now she then connected for support to other parents. In this video, we are showing them sitting in the house, on their bed, wherever they are in South Africa. In their particular story, it's in a small town called Malmesbury in the Western Cape province. And she's sitting in a house, actually taking up this right to political participation. So we'll take it from after this one further. To make him a little bit short for the time limit, but we can share that with you also. So that's just an example, for instance, how she's using the tool that's based on a link between the UN Convention's articles and then the pillars of the white paper of the rights of persons with disabilities. So in this particular case, she monitored white paper pillar 4, which is about the access to education for Nana in South Africa. So then how do we use the results? Because ultimately that's really what it's about. We've been using the results from a parent-led monitoring to do submissions to the shadow report to the UN Convention in South Africa at the moment. We are finalizing that. We've been using it for progress reports on the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities in South Africa, and just generally in terms of policy input and reporting. So that is our story, how we're using the parent network and the tool, the Let's Talk Parents tool, to make sure that we can advocate for political participation for parents of children with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erna, for sharing. Let's try if our colleague from Lesotho is online, is Nkhasi. He would like to share a case study from Lesotho, but I'm not sure he's online. He's not online. Thank you very much. Let's go to the last speaker, Laurene LECLERCQ. She would like to talk about supporting democracy through inclusive local governance in Senegal and Cameroon, a program of citizenship and political participation of women and men with disability. Laurene, the floor is yours.
Merci, Elie. So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to share with you Sightsavers program on citizenship and political participation of women and men with disabilities, and more especially how meaningful participation in local governance processes has been made possible in 9 local councils of 6 different regions in Senegal and Cameroon. So the challenges we faced while starting in 2018 were the inadequate representation and participation of people with disabilities in the political sphere. And there was also a very poor gender balance. Another challenge that we faced was the absence of disability-inclusive local development processes. So basically, persons with disabilities were not associated to any management of the city or municipalities, and local councillors didn't know how to include people with disabilities in the discussions. And at national level, the ministries of decentralization or ministry of governance were delegated the so-called disability affairs to the ministries of social affairs. So there was no recognition of the role and place of people with disabilities in political processes or policies at local level. Our theory of change identified 3 pathways. So you can see the first one at micro level, population and communities. We supported empowerment of people with disabilities in local governance and leadership, trying to increase self-confidence and addressing stigma and discrimination. The second pathway at mezzo level is systems and services. So we try to ensure accessibility to official documents and information and political spaces to people with disabilities. And the third pathway is governance and policies, supporting ownership of the relevant ministries and policy change. So what was our goal in this project? Our goal was that women and men with disabilities should be elected as local councillors, or at least should be represented in local council committees. And we had an assumption. We were thinking that if they meaningfully contribute to the process of local development, you can see the cycle here on the slide. So if they meaningfully contribute to the diagnosis of the needs at community level, the analysis of these needs, conceptualization, planning and implementation of local projects, monitoring and evaluation at local level, then their needs and aspirations would be taken into account within the general local development plans of the municipalities and in the participatory budgets. So therefore, their needs would be translated into inclusive local services. So these were our assumption. In the slide, you can see the second picture, which is person with disabilities working with other local councillors to include their need in the general local development plan of the municipality. So to achieve this goal, we had key activities during 5 years of the project. We carried out SBC studies on stigma and discrimination in political participation. We co-designed a lot of resources. You can see technical guides, training modules and tools, especially on local development and participatory budget. Advocacy, awareness raising and training of all stakeholders. We also spend time to support people with disability to obtain their official papers like ID cards or voting cards. We were doing coaching and networking of candidates with disabilities and also twinning on a mentoring system with local politicians. And finally, a big part of our project was also to co-fund inclusive local development plans in municipalities. So in terms of achievements, in Senegal and Cameroon, we have seen for the first time women and men with disabilities elected as local councillors and officially appointed as active members of local councils' thematic committees. So basically in municipalities or local council, you have committees working on health, on education, on economic empowerment, social, etc. And we had people with disabilities who were appointed as representatives in each of these thematic committees, so they could really act as influencers. And we can record 204 people with disabilities so far, who are either elected as local councillor or parliamentarians or senators, or who have been included on political parties' list in an eligible position. Another achievement was that in Cameroon, 40,000 people with disabilities were registered in the voting list. And in Senegal, the electoral code was revised and made more disability inclusive. So this is my last slide. Way forward. So thanks to our donor, Irish Aid, in the 5 coming years, we will scale up nationally this project, because this project was a pilot, and now we work with the ministries of decentralization in Senegal and Cameroon to see how we can scale up nationally to all districts and all regions. We can say that our gender approach was quite strong in the program, but we have identified other gaps, and for the next program we have identified better targeted interventions for people with disabilities that were left behind, especially people with intellectual disabilities. And we also would like to focus on youth, because it's the new generation. So we have a program starting in Sierra Leone to duplicate our approach with a specific focus on youth with disabilities, citizenship, and political participation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laurene. Now we have the opportunity to interact with speakers, but before I give the floor to you, the audience, I have some few questions to speakers. Let's start with Etienne from Burkina Faso. I would like to know why the political participation for persons with disability is so important in your country.
Thank you. I don't know if I have to start by referring to the UN Convention, of course, but in any case, let's say, as a right matter, each person counts. We cannot undermine the voices of millions of persons, and it's essential to, I want to say again, to leave no one behind. The second thing I can highlight is the need to unlock the potential of these people, and by giving or creating appropriate space and opportunity to express, of course, their need, but also a thing where persons with disabilities are the best place to express their need and also to advocate their place. And we are sure and convinced that they can also contribute in their communities and also in the government bodies. But the starting point, of course, for some of these results, starting by participating in elections, be as voter or as candidate. So if we do not miss some goal like the inclusive society we are teaching and preaching, it's important to think about the condition of the full participation in political competitions.
Thank you very much, Etienne. I hope that Emmanuel is still online from Nigeria. Emmanuel, I would like to know, regarding all the challenges...
Yes, I'm online.
Okay, thank you. Regarding all the challenges you are facing in this project, how can you ensure that this innovation to be part of the national system and policy for a sustainable practice by using ICT in the training and education?
Thank you very much. We know ICT technologies is a new innovation in modern time. As a humanitarian organization, we are looking forward to cooperate with other organizations like School Educational Board and Ministry of Education, a kind of partnership to aid us to work toward that application. Because if you do it on our own, you may not go far in our project. So there is need for collaboration, a kind of partnership to achieve the objective of the project. Hello?
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. Erna, maybe Francisca, yeah. How can you make sure that parent voices are or will be heard all time by policy makers and decision makers for a full and meaningful participation in politics?
Thank you so much, Elie. Just to introduce myself, I'm Francisca. I'm Anna's colleague. I'm a 30-year-old white female with long dark brown hair, brown eyes, and I'm wearing a black shirt. And to respond to your question, Elie, I think firstly it's important to mention the role that parents have played in and will continue to play in the sustainability of the parent network. So the network was designed with a participatory approach, and parents were engaged from the beginning in designing the model of the network. But right now also include roles such as network parents that Adna mentioned in the presentation, and that these roles remain at the core of the network and ensure that the network remains goal-directed and really focuses on the issues that are relevant to parents as those adapt and change over time. Network parents are also a dedicated role that is performed by parents, and they are especially important that in ensuring that parent voices are highlighted. Secondly, also, we hope to continue scaling the network in South Africa. When we started the parent network, we had a goal of having one network parent in each district, which is a smaller geographical location of South Africa. And it has very quickly become noticeable that that's not a big enough of a goal. And we now aim to have one network parent in each town of South Africa. And this is really to ensure that all parents, including parents who do not have access to a WhatsApp-enabled smartphones, have access to the network and are able to feed their data through to the network and receive support from network parents. And then lastly, really, it's around the sustainability of the network in terms of continued relationships with governmental departments, funders, and the private sector. And really, as we scale and grow, it's around finding funders and investors that are able to match the adaptive needs of the network, so that we can continue to acknowledge the important role that parents play in the network.
Thank you very much, Francisca. Laurene, one of the biggest challenges for a person with disability is building the self-confidence in the whole sector of the life. How your program managed to pull out so many women and men with disability into political sphere, and how to make this initiative more sustainable.
Thank you, Elie. So what we can say is that it was really a gradual initiative during 5 years. So of course, first of all, we work with and through OPDs to support and guide their members. But also we have identified women and men with disabilities who are really willing to be candidates in local elections throughout the 2 countries, in Senegal and Cameroon. And these people really wanted to participate in local decision-making groups. So when we have identified them, there was a mix of capacity building activities. And I can say that during this conference, I've heard many activities similar in various sessions. For us, it was training these people in leadership, communication, advocacy, but also on local development, electoral processes, and local governance system, because it's not so obvious. And then we had all these activities on coaching, individual coaching, so it took a lot of time, it's true, and peer-to-peer support. And especially for women with disabilities, we had a strategy which was to organize a mentoring system. So having women leader or women politician supporting one woman with disability wanted to be candidate, and build self-confidence, explaining the difficulties of being a woman participating in communities and in local councils, etc. And then we had all these activities around networking and alliances. What we did also to build self-confidence was to organize confrontational meetings with local councillors and other politicians to really fight the myths and stereotypes about people with disabilities, so-called lack of capacities, or so-called having not added value or being a burden for communities, and showing them that they were doing things for the community at local level also, and that they had a voice. Now, in terms of sustainability, we know it's always more complex, but really what I said is that we are really doing decentralization system strengthening here. So we are working through the ministries of decentralization to see how we will scale up all this initiative nationally, working through various institutions, decentralization institutions, sorry. We will continue to build the capacities, or at least to support the OPD federations, but not only the federation, right? It's a program on decentralization, so we will also work to see how we can support at regional level OPDs and also at local level. And we know that it's much more complex because most of the time the literacy is not here, the self-confidence is not here, etc. And yeah, I mean, we will put a stronger focus on youth now. It's the next generation, so hoping that in terms of sustainability, they will take the lead step by step.
Thank you very much, Laurene. Now, I think if there is someone from the audience who wants to interact with the speakers, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. Edward Winter, World Vision. A couple of questions. First for Erna and Francesca. Just those network parents, how do you recruit them? Are they volunteers or they have a specific function? And second, to Laurene, you know, you said that you're working through local government, but often that's very ineffectual. It's not working properly. To what extent were you able to shift budget allocations to the issues prioritized by persons with disabilities within the program? You know, did you see any concrete changes there? Thanks.
Thank you, Erna, and then Laurene. Francisca.
Thank you. So the network parents was a role that we started up from last year, and we advertised it into the network of parents with some criteria around activities and tasks that the network parents would be completing. So things like availability of time, kind of a personality to want to support other parents, run door-to-doors, avail yourself to online training on the WhatsApp platform, and feel confident to kind of take the information and training and share it with others. And then through that process, parents applied, and they sent a short, it could be a written WhatsApp text. Some parents even wrote it on a piece of paper, took a picture, sent it to us, a motivation of why they wanted to be a network parent. One of the criteria was either a parent or a caregiver of a child with a disability or a person with a disability, or a person with a disability themselves. Really, we felt quite strongly, and parents felt really strongly, that the network should really be for people with disabilities and for parents of children and people with disabilities, so that can remain kind of a core of the network and the message that we spread.
Just on the payment, so in the beginning it was all quite voluntarily, so people came, you know, parents came together and so on. But as we grew, we also felt that it's important to make a statement that caregiving is a job. So we actually raised funds for a stipend, so we pay parents to do that, and we continue to do that as much as we can. But that's another important statement we wanted to make from the beginning, that this type of work is work. It's not just something you just give your time for.
So, working with local governments, it's true, it's not easy. But we work through various decentralization institutions to get to the local governments. For example, in these countries, you have the associations of mayors. You have the Ministry of Decentralization regional delegations and district delegations. You also have, for example, the national schools of local councillors or national schools of administrators. You also have the high councils of local councils. So you have a lot of various actors that could help you in your advocacy if really you explain the approach. And this is what we did really. We even put some inclusive local development strategies and approach within their curricula. We trained the key leaders of this association so that at some point they could also cascade this training at local level. So this is how we worked with local governments. And we were quite surprised because once the stigma and stereotypes that local councillors may have towards the participation of persons with disability were out, then finally we could see people who really had willingness to have persons with disability on board. So of course, there were some pilots, but at least we know now what kind of approach we can take with which strategic actors, etc. Now, as for the budget allocation, what we did in these pilot local councils was really to work with them on their local development plans that they have. And also, most of them had some approach on
to work
had some
local development plan.
And most of them had some participatory budget cycle. Let's say that they try to involve the community to decide the key funding components of their plans. So we made sure that persons with disabilities and their representatives were in these sessions. And knowing that it would not be enough, of course, because at some point when you have arbitration about what needs to be funded and what resources you effectively have, to be sure that the disability inclusion would not be out. We worked also through the donors and the national development pot, if you want, who are funding this local council's budget. And we work with them to add disability criteria within their checklist to ensure that this would be a condition for a local council to receive funds from the national government funds and from donors to ensure that you would have disability inclusive criteria in these budgets.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hello. Good morning. I know that you speak about the political participation of people with disabilities, and I want to know if you have any project that allow people with disabilities who are not able to write, if you have any kind of project to allow them to vote using new technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who want to interact to answer to the question? I don't know, Emmanuel, you would like to interact?
Okay,
Okay, if there anyone who want to answer to the question, try.
Okay, since the question is to all of us, specifically for us in Light for the World, we do not really have a project focused on a specific type of disability. We had some initiatives that were ongoing, maybe in the new cycle of programming, because we are always in this it's a thematic and in of strategic country strategic plan talking about the disability inclusion, and this is covering cross-cutting issues and including these political rights and related matters. So as far as any opportunities can be translated into project, it's something we can take into account, but currently we do not have a specific project for that.
Thank you, Etienne. Something to add?
Yeah, maybe just a small thing to add. I think it's we found that it's also really key to look at your methodology. So, for instance, we didn't even expect in the beginning that WhatsApp could be like quite like an inclusive form of education. So we do get parents or even persons with disabilities who just use voice note or pictures or texting. So I think it's also about, for us in any case, what we've learned is how we can use like WhatsApp, for instance, to be quite an inclusive communication tool for participation. It's kind of something that came, we didn't imagine that in the beginning, but through doing the work, learning that's really been quite enabling.
Thank you. There are 3 people.
Sorry, I had a response on that, just very quick. The International Foundation for Electoral Systems, who won an award here, they're not present in the room. They've done adaptations to standards in many different countries. So they're the best people to talk to. They're in the guide, so I recommend that. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Hi, Rishti Nakdeen from the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Just in response to the question, I think some of the challenges around assistive technologies in many African countries face a problem of infrastructure in those places. So the ability to introduce that is still very much along the lines of Braille templates, ballot papers that assist, not yet around the introduction of computer technology in those places. I had a question specifically for Sightsavers, and this relates to the stigma question. And the question relates more around the stigma around political parties adding people with disabilities on their proportional representation lists, and what your findings have been around tackling those issues from the political party side as opposed to from the candidate side. If you could elaborate a little bit more, because it's interesting that you talk about local councils as a starting point, but in a country like Senegal, would you eventually aim to have a presidential candidate, somebody with a disability being able to stand, and what do you think that trajectory will look like in terms of change?
Before Laurene answers to the question, I would take the last question from the audience, because we promised to stay and to keep on time. So, Steve.
Thank you. I'm Steve Mboko from the Brazzaville Group on Disability Statistics. My question goes to Laurence. I have 2 questions for her. The first one is, do you have accurate data to be sure that you have been inclusive about your action in Senegal and Cameroon? And the second one is there any challenge that you have been facing since you work with many public organizations in the 2 countries, Senegal and Cameroon? Thank you.
Okay, Laurene, 2 minutes, and then we will go to the recap. Thank you.
Okay. So for political parties, First of all, of course, we worked with local OPDs to ensure they understood really the governance system, how it works, what is it to be a representative, what is it to be in a party, etc. And then we worked with them on advocacy. And they went to visit each political parties. I mean, there are so many sometimes, so at least the 10 more important political parties. And before the elections, and they were expressing their needs, what they wanted to have, the representation they thought they had the right to have in the party, and they were asking the leaders of this party some pledge for the next election. And of course, they recorded this pledge, they put that on video, on paper, etc. And then they checked the political party manifestos as well to ensure that there were some disability, let's say, consideration. So when the time of election was coming, just before, you know, they made some announcement in the radio, in the local TV, saying that, well, these candidates have pledged that we would have at least one person in our list in an eligible position, which means that if we won we will probably be at the local council as local councillors elected because we have a seat ensured by the political party. And another strategy was to try to count persons with disability in the municipalities to say, look, we represent X number of voices. So what are you doing for us? Because we, OPD, local OPD, we will go and visit our members, and we will also talk about the different manifestos and what they are in these manifestos. So what do you offer, basically?
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Laurene?
Yeah.
Quickly, we have to make a recap, and then...
Maybe just on the data.
Yeah.
So we can give you some research that we did at the beginning and at the end of the project. So we have baseline and end line. And we did door-to-door, let's say, interviews to understand better the situation. So we have this research that we can that are published in our website and that we can share with you, of course.
Thank you. I would encourage people to continue interacting with all the speakers after this session. Yeah, time to recap. To improve the political participation in Africa, some action need to be taken. Advocacy that persons with disability are represented in the election committee, but also in the National Election Commission. Persons with disability are represented and elected in local council and local development committees. Building capacity of persons with disability and their organization to lead advocacy for the implementation of the UN CRPD and also to develop the report to the Human Rights Commission. Supporting national election bodies on how to make election inclusive for persons with disability, like developing inclusive guidelines. Raising interest for women and men with disability to politics, supporting government to implement the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability by developing application of legal and legislative texts. Raising awareness among political parties to the need for and importance of valuing the electorate of persons with disability and the eligibility for political positions. Continue and increase the awareness raising at different levels of electoral process. And to end by documenting and disseminating good practices and lessons learned on inclusive political participation of persons with disability. Kadiba from Senegal said, politics is a royal road for persons with disability, especially women, to access positions of responsibility or decision-making body and defend their rights. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank to all people who are online. We are at the end of our session. Thank you very much for your participation, your high interest to this topic. Let's continue advocating for the full and meaningful participation of persons with disability to inclusive rights. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the presenters.